You ever feel, you do everything right raising your kids, like you really put in the effort, give them good values,
Hmm.
and then they make these choices that are like, what? Where did that come from?
Yeah, it's like you're suddenly dealing with a totally different person.
Exactly. So that's kind of what we're diving into today, this whole idea of when good kids, kids raised with love and support suddenly go off script.
Right. Right.
And we've got this proposed podcast episode script here. And honestly, it gets into some pretty heavy stuff.
It does, yeah.
Like the whole bad seed concept, is it nature or nurture?
Hmm.
And the parents, they're blindsided, they're devastated, they feel like they did something wrong.
Totally. But you know what's interesting is this script also talks about redemption. Like, even after things go sideways, there's still hope for things to get back on track.
That's a good point. It's not all doom and gloom.
Definitely not. What really struck me about this script, though, is that it focuses on situations where parents have seemingly done everything right, followed all the rules, so to speak.
Right, like textbook parenting.
And yet your child still ends up veering off in a direction they never expected.
Yeah, and the script really captures the emotional roller coaster that those parents go through. The guilt,
Oh, for sure.
the self-doubt, that feeling of almost being betrayed by their own kid. It's heavy stuff, and I bet it resonates with a lot of people listening, people who've been through similar things.
Absolutely. It's a universal experience in a way.
Yeah.
But, even though the script acknowledges that pain and confusion, it also offers some potential explanations for this whole going rogue thing.
So, what are some of the reasons behind this? Give us the inside scoop.
Well, there was this one story really stayed with me. It was about this daughter raised in a super structured, loving home, model student, got a scholarship to a great college.
Okay, sounds like she's got it all figured out.
Right. You'd think so. But then, out of nowhere, she drops out of college, gets mixed up with this toxic partner, and starts making decisions that totally contradict everything her parents had tried to instill in her.
Whoa, talk about a plot twist. That's got to be a punch in the gut for any parent. You think you've got this recipe for success all figured out,
Yeah.
and then bam, the whole thing falls apart. What happened? Did we miss a crucial ingredient?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And the script explores a bunch of different possibilities. It draws from, like, real-life stories and what experts have to say about this kind of thing.
Okay, spill the beans. What are some of the factors at play here?
Well, one of the first things it digs into is the insane amount of pressure a lot of teens are dealing with these days.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine.
The need to succeed academically, the constant barrage of social media trying to fit in, figuring out who they are outside of their family. It's a lot.
Yeah, no kidding. It's like they're trying to navigate a minefield blindfolded.
Exactly. And, the script also touches on mental health, which I think is so important to talk about, especially these days.
It's definitely a huge factor.
We can't underestimate the impact of things like anxiety and depression, those kinds of challenges that young people might be wrestling with. And sometimes what looks like rebellion or defiance, it's actually a cry for help, a sign that they're struggling inside.
It's like a mask almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a good point for parents, right?
Yeah.
We need to be paying attention not just to our kids' actions,
Yeah.
but also to their emotional state.
Mm-hmm.
Are they withdrawing? Are their grades tanking? Spending all their time online?
Right, those could be warning signs that something's not right.
Exactly. And that's where open communication becomes so vital.
Oh, I completely agree.
Even when it's tough,
Yeah.
when you're frustrated or scared even, creating a safe space where your kid feels like they can talk to you without being judged,
Yeah.
that's absolutely crucial.
Easier said than done, though, right? I mean, how do you actually do that? Especially when your teenager seems determined to push you away.
Right. It's tough. It is. But the script, it offers some practical advice here. It goes beyond those generic platitudes like keep the lines of communication open.
Right, those don't really help in the heat of the moment.
No, they don't. It talks about this idea of active listening, which means putting aside your judgments and really hearing what your child is trying to tell you.
So no lectures or I told you so moments.
Nope. It's about empathy, even if you don't agree with their choices. Like, let's say your kid is hanging out with a group of friends you're not crazy about. Instead of forbidding them from seeing those friends.
Which we all know just backfires.
Right, exactly. Which just makes them rebel even harder. Try asking open-ended questions like, what do you like about hanging out with them?
Interesting. So you're trying to understand their perspective even if you don't agree with it.
Yeah, and by doing that, you might actually open the door for more honest conversation.
And maybe get some clues as to what they're looking for in those relationships.
Totally. It's like a detective novel. You're trying to uncover the hidden reasons, piece together why a kid who seemingly has it all together would start making these questionable choices.
I love that analogy. And speaking of mysteries, the script also brings up that whole bad seed concept.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Is there really such a thing as a child who's just born bad? Or is that just a way to explain behavior that we don't understand?
It's definitely a loaded term. I've heard people say things like, oh, that kid is just trouble, as if it's predetermined. But I don't know.
Is there actually any scientific basis for that?
Well, the script digs into that, and it really pushes back against that simplistic black and white bad seed idea.
Okay, good.
It argues that while genetics definitely play a role in shaping who we are, it's a lot more nuanced than that.
So it's not like there's a specific bad seed gene.
Right. It's not that straightforward.
I mean, we all know environment plays a role too, right?
Absolutely. It's not nature versus nurture. It's nature and nurture all tangled up together.
And that makes a lot more sense. So if we're moving away from this whole bad seed idea, what are some other possible explanations for why kids, even kids who've had what seems like a good upbringing, might start going down the wrong path?
Well, the script points out that even in families that appear perfect from the outside, there can be these underlying pressures and dynamics going on that we don't always see.
No, for sure. Every family has its secrets.
Right. Think about the pressure to live up to expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Those unspoken family rules, the need to fit into a certain mold.
Yeah, all that stuff can really weigh on a kid.
Absolutely. And for some kids, those unspoken pressures or anxieties, it just becomes too much to bear.
And they start acting out as a way of coping.
Exactly. Or trying to assert some control over their own lives.
So it's not always about intentional rebellion.
Right. Sometimes it's more about feeling trapped.
Or overwhelmed.
Exactly. It's like a pressure cooker. If the pressure keeps building and there's no release valve, eventually something's got to give.
Okay, so we've got peer pressure, mental health struggles, and these hidden family dynamics as potential culprits. But what about the need for independence? I mean, isn't it normal for teenagers to start pulling away from their parents, trying to figure out who they are on their own?
Totally, totally. And the script acknowledges that this push for autonomy is actually a healthy part of adolescence.
Right, it's part of growing up.
But sometimes that exploration can lead kids to experiment with things that seem totally out of character.
So how do we as parents know the difference between healthy exploration and something more worrisome? Where do we draw the line?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Mm.
It's the one that every parent grapples with at some point.
I'd love to hear more about that.
Well, you'll have to stay tuned for part 2, where we'll really dig into some strategies for navigating this tricky terrain.
Ooh, a cliffhanger. I'm already intrigued.
But I can give you a little sneak peek. It involves a delicate balance between setting boundaries, offering support, and recognizing that sometimes the most loving thing we can do is let go.
Letting go. Now, that's a tough one. Sounds like we've got a lot to unpack in the next part. But for now, I'm going to leave our listeners with this thought. If even a seemingly perfect upbringing can't guarantee a smooth path, what does that tell us about free will? About all the complex factors that shape who we become?
That's a good one. A lot to ponder there.
Definitely. It's something to think about as we wait for part 2 of this deep dive. All right, so we've established there's this whole phenomenon of good kids, kids who seemingly have it all, making choices that leave their parents scratching their heads. We touched on those hidden pressures, the fact that the teenage brain's kind of still under construction, the need for open communication, and of course that whole tough love thing, which I'm still wrapping my head around. But how do we as parents actually put all this into practice, especially that letting go part? You left us hanging with that one.
Letting go, that's definitely one of the hardest parts of parenting. Especially when you see your kid heading down a path that, well, worries you. But the script makes this really important point. It's not about giving up on them. It's about recognizing they have their own agency, letting them experience the natural consequences of their choices.
I get that in theory, but isn't there a risk in being too hands-off? What if those consequences are seriously damaging?
Right. It's a balancing act, for sure. Protecting them, but also allowing them to learn from their missteps. The script actually brings up tough love.
Ah, yes, tough love. Everyone talks about it, but what does it actually look like in real life?
Well, think of it as setting clear boundaries and consequences, even when it's hard to do. Recognizing that you can't force your child to make certain choices, but you can control how you react to those choices.
So give me an example for those of us who need a tough love crash course.
Okay, let's say your teenager is failing a class. They're blowing off homework, glued to their phone instead. Tough love, in this situation, it might mean saying, look, I'm here for you, but I'm not going to nag you about your schoolwork. That's on you. You got to face the consequences if you choose not to make it a priority.
So it's more about letting those natural consequences run their course, not jumping in to rescue them from the fallout.
Exactly. Sometimes those consequences, they're the best teachers. But that doesn't mean abandoning them completely. You can still listen, offer support, maybe even help them come up with a plan to get back on track.
Right.
But the key is they need to own their choices and be responsible for the outcome.
You know, I'm seeing how tough love can actually be empowering. It's like helping them build those self-reliance muscles.
It is, yeah. Even if it means watching them stumble a bit.
But let's be honest, it's got to be hard to resist that urge to swoop in and fix everything.
Oh, tell me about it.
Yeah.
It goes against every parental instinct.
Mm.
But the script reminds us that sometimes trying to fix things can backfire.
Else.
It sends the message that they're not capable of handling their own problems, which can hurt their self-esteem, make them even more dependent.
It's like we're accidentally creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. We think they need saving, so they start to believe it too.
Right. But the script also emphasizes that there are times when professional help is necessary.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're seeing signs of serious mental health issues, substance abuse, things like that, reaching out for professional guidance is crucial.
And it's okay for us as parents to need support too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Dealing with a child who's, gone rogue, it's emotionally exhausting. It's okay to admit we need help too.
It takes a village and all that. Speaking of which, the script talks about self-care for parents.
Yeah, taking care of yourself is so important.
It uses that great analogy of you can't pour from an empty cup. So true. Okay, so we've got tough love, professional help when needed, taking care of ourselves. What other nuggets of wisdom does this script offer up?
Well, it comes back to open communication, but it goes a bit deeper. Offers some tips for making those conversations happen.
Because let's be honest, just telling a teenager, talk to me,
Yeah.
is about as effective as telling them to clean their room.
Right. The script emphasizes picking the right time and place for those talks. Don't try to force a deep conversation when you're rushing to get dinner on the table or they're on their phone.
Yeah, that's never going to work.
Nope. Create a relaxed setting. Maybe go for a walk, drive in the car, someplace where they feel less pressure to make eye contact.
Clever. Subtly removing those barriers. I like it. What else?
It also talks about using I statements instead of accusations. So instead of saying, you're always so secretive, try something like, I feel worried when you don't tell me what's going on.
That's a good tip. Expressing your feelings without putting them on the defensive.
Exactly. And it encourages parents to be mindful of body language, too. Are you crossing your arms, frowning, tapping your foot? Those nonverbal cues, they can send the message that you're not really open to hearing them.
It's all about creating that feeling of openness and receptivity.
Right. We want them to feel heard, not judged.
Okay, but what about those times when they absolutely refuse to talk? What then?
The script acknowledges that there will be times when your child just isn't ready or willing to open up, and that's okay. It's about respecting their boundaries, letting them know you're there when they are ready.
Finding that balance between persistence and patience.
Exactly. And sometimes the best way to encourage communication is to model it ourselves. Talk to your kids about your struggles, your doubts, your fears. Let them see that you're human too.
That's such a powerful point. It's like saying, hey, it's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to be vulnerable. We're all in this together.
Right. And that sense of shared humanity can be huge. It can build trust, strengthen the connection between you, and pave the way for more open and honest communication down the road.
I love how this keeps circling back to the fact that parenting is a two-way street. It's not just about us fixing our kids. It's about growing and changing with them.
It is. It is.
Yeah. But let's be real. Sometimes it feels like they're the ones doing all the growing and we're just trying to keep up.
Oh, I hear you. But that's part of what makes it so challenging and rewarding, right?
Yeah.
We're constantly being pushed out of our comfort zones, forced to confront our own assumptions, to learn and adapt as we go.
It's like we're on this crazy roller coaster together.
That's a great way to put it.
We're just holding on tight, trying to enjoy the ride, even when it gets a little bumpy.
I like that. But remember, even roller coasters have those safety harnesses.
Yeah.
And that's where setting those boundaries, those consequences comes in. It's about creating structure, even when things feel chaotic.
So it's less about controlling their every move and more about providing a safe space for them to grow and explore.
Exactly.
But with all this talk about tough love and boundaries, I don't want our listeners to forget the importance of love and support.
Of course not. And the script emphasizes that too. It's about finding that balance, holding them accountable, but also letting them know that no matter what, they are loved.
Unconditionally. It's like that saying, discipline without love is tyranny, but love without discipline is sentimentality.
Ooh, that's a good one. And it reminds us that both are crucial when it comes to raising healthy, resilient kids.
Okay, so we've talked about tough love, professional help, open communication, self-care, unconditional love. It's a lot to take in, but I feel like we're starting to build a pretty decent toolkit for navigating those choppy
I
waters.
think so too.
But there's one thing I still can't quite figure out. If we've done our best to create a loving and supportive environment, if we've taught them strong values, why do some kids still choose to rebel? Like, what's going on in their brains?
That's a question that's been puzzling parents and experts forever. And the script doesn't claim to have all the answers, but it does offer some interesting insights into that teenage brain.
Okay, give us a neurological lowdown.
Well, for one thing, it points out that the teenage brain is still very much a work in progress.
Ah, so that explains why their decision-making isn't always the best.
Right. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for things like impulse control, planning ahead, making good choices, it doesn't fully develop until, like, our mid-20s.
So basically, their rational brain is still playing catch-up.
Exactly. And that means they're more susceptible to peer pressure, more likely to take risks, less able to think about those long-term consequences. It's not that they're trying to be difficult, it's that their brains are literally wired differently.
It's like they're trying to navigate the world with a half-built GPS. No wonder they take a wrong turn sometimes.
I love that analogy, and it's so important for us as parents to remember this. It doesn't excuse their actions, but it helps us approach them with more empathy and patience.
So not letting them off the hook, but understanding that their decision-making process is still under construction. But what about hormones? Don't they play a role in all this too?
Huge role. Hormones are shaping their moods, energy levels, sense of self, everything, really. And it's not just testosterone and estrogen, it's dopamine, oxytocin, all those chemicals involved in reward seeking and social bonding.
So they're driven by this intense need for novelty, excitement, connection, but their judgment isn't always there when it comes to fulfilling those needs.
Exactly. And that's why it's so crucial for parents to provide healthy outlets for those urges. Encourage their passions, get them involved in activities that give them purpose, help them build strong friendships with people who share their values.
So channel those intense energies into something positive instead of trying to suppress them.
Exactly.
But even knowing all this about their brains, the hormones, it can still be so frustrating when your child makes decisions that seem self-destructive or even hurtful.
Oh, absolutely.
Sure.
It's tough, but the script reminds us that their behavior isn't always a direct reflection of our parenting.
That's a good point. It's easy to take it personally.
It is, but it's more about where they are in their own journey.
It's like we're supporting actors in their life movie, and we don't always get to choose the script.
I love that. And it reminds us that we don't have to be perfect parents. We just have to be present, loving, and supportive guides along the way.
And sometimes the most loving thing to do is to step back. Let them make those mistakes, even if it hurts us to watch.
So true. And those mistakes, as hard as they are, they can be powerful lessons.
Like they say, sometimes you have to fall down to learn how to get back up.
Exactly. Our job as parents isn't to prevent them from falling. It's to be there to help them dust themselves off and try again.
Yeah.
But, amid all this talk about challenges and struggles,
Yeah.
I don't want anyone to forget that adolescence can also be a beautiful, transformative time.
Oh, for sure. It's a time of immense growth, discovery, self-expression.
Exactly.
And as parents, we get to witness all of that.
And celebrate their individuality.
Yeah, exactly. But one thing that keeps coming back to me is this idea of redemption.
Mm-hmm.
The script really emphasizes the possibility of turning things around, even after a kid has gone down a really tough path.
It does, yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a message of hope, something we all need to hear. As parents, as human beings, it reminds us that nobody is beyond redemption. Even the kids who seem lost, they still have the potential to turn things around.
But let's be honest, it's not always a happy ending.
It's not, no.
Yeah.
Some kids struggle for years, some never quite find their way back, and the script doesn't shy away from that. But it does offer this powerful reminder. Change is always possible, even when it seems hopeless.
And that's where love, forgiveness, and unwavering support come in.
They're essential, absolutely.
One of the things I found so moving about this script was the story of the daughter who eventually found her way back.
Yeah, her story was powerful.
It wasn't easy, it took time, but she did it. Rebuilt her life, her relationship with her parents. What do you think were the key factors in her turnaround?
Well, the script highlights the importance of professional help. In her case, therapy was crucial. Helped her understand her behaviors, develop coping strategies, work through some past trauma.
So it wasn't just willpower or tough love, it was about addressing those deeper issues.
Yeah, exactly. It also emphasizes the importance of community. For her, it was therapy, a good group of friends, and reconnecting with her faith that helped her get back on track.
It sounds like she had this whole network of people who believed in her, even when she didn't believe in herself.
And that's so important, especially for young people who are struggling. Knowing they're not alone, that people care, that there's a place for them, it can make all the difference.
And sometimes it's those small acts of kindness that really make an impact. A listening ear, a shoulder to cry on, a few words of encouragement.
Those little things can be huge.
They really can.
And the script reminds us that we all have a role to play in creating that support system for young people. It's not just about our own kids. It's about being there for all the kids in our community.
It takes a village, right? And sometimes being part of that village simply means showing up, being present, letting them know they matter.
That's it. And that's a message we can all take to heart, no matter what role we play in a young person's life.
Well said. So we've talked about the challenges, the potential pitfalls, the importance of boundaries and consequences, the power of love and support, and the very real possibility of redemption. It's been quite the journey, and I feel like we've only scratched the surface. What else does this script have in store for us in this final part?
It ends by really exploring the nature of individual choice, the complexities of the parent-child relationship, and ultimately, the message of hope that runs through this whole conversation. It's a reminder that even when we can't control the outcome, we can choose how we respond to the challenges life throws our way.
Ooh, that sounds deep. I can't wait to hear more. It sounds like the perfect way to wrap up this deep dive into the world of parenting teenagers. It's a world that can be confusing, frustrating, but also incredibly rewarding. So we've spent the last two parts really digging into this whole idea of good kids making choices that will leave us parents baffled. We talked about all those hidden pressures they face, the fact that their brains are still developing, the importance of communication, setting boundaries, even tough love. But the question that keeps coming back to me is this. If having a loving upbringing and strong values doesn't guarantee a smooth ride, what does that say about a kid's own free will? Like, how much control do they actually have over the choices they make?
It's a question that gets to the heart of what it means to be human, right? We can do our best to guide them, nurture them, give them a solid foundation, but ultimately, they're the ones writing their own stories.
And those stories might have some unexpected plot twists, chapters we wouldn't have written ourselves, maybe even a cliffhanger or two that leaves us pacing the floor.
Exactly. And I think this script does a great job of acknowledging that tension, that pull between our desire to protect our kids and the reality that they are their own people with their own paths to forge.
It's funny, we always talk about letting go when they graduate high school, go off to college, move out. But this script makes me realize that letting go starts way earlier.
It really does. It's a process, isn't it? An ongoing act of surrender. We have to accept that we can't control every aspect of their lives, shield them from every hurt, dictate every choice they make.
And that's scary, especially when we see them making choices that we know could lead to pain or disappointment.
It is scary. But the script also reminds us that pain and disappointment are part of life, part of growing up.
They're how we learn.
Exactly. They help us build resilience, develop character. They're part of figuring out who we are, what matters to us.
So it's not about creating this perfectly safe, bubble-wrapped world for our kids.
No. It's more about giving them the tools they need to navigate the ups and downs that life inevitably throws their way.
To bounce back when they fall.
Exactly. Fostering their independence, helping them think critically, develop a strong sense of self, so they have that inner compass to guide them when things get tough.
It's like we're equipping them for the journey, not paving the road for them.
I like that.
As you're saying all this, I keep thinking back to the story of the daughter who went through that really rough patch, but eventually found her way back. It wasn't easy. There were definitely setbacks, but she came out stronger in the end. What do you think were the key things that helped her turn things around?
Well, the script emphasizes something really crucial. She realized she needed help, and she was brave enough to ask for it.
And she had people there to support her, right? People who didn't judge her, who didn't make her feel ashamed for struggling.
Yes. And that's such a powerful message for all of us, whether it's therapy, a support group, a mentor, or just loving friends and family.
Mhm.
Having people in our corner makes a world of difference, especially when we're going through a tough time.
It's like knowing you're not alone in the struggle, that can give you the strength to keep going.
Absolutely. And what I really appreciate about this script is that it doesn't try to sugarcoat the parent-child relationship. It acknowledges that there are going to be times when we feel frustrated with our kids, maybe even angry or disappointed.
Yeah, parenting isn't all sunshine and rainbows. But the script also reminds us that even in those tough moments, love is the foundation.
It is. And that love doesn't mean we agree with every choice they make or try to rescue them from every consequence. It means creating space for them to make mistakes, to learn their own lessons, to become who they're meant to be, even if it looks different from what we imagined.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's about embracing their individuality, celebrating their strengths, trusting that they can create their own fulfilling lives, even if it's not the path we would have chosen for them.
Exactly. And I think that's the real beauty of being a parent. It's not about trying to create many versions of ourselves. It's about nurturing the seeds of their unique potential
Yeah.
and then having the courage to step back and watch them bloom.
And sometimes those blooms are going to be unexpected, maybe even a little wild and messy, but that's okay.
It's all part of the process.
It is. And you know what's amazing is that while we're nurturing those blooms, we often find ourselves growing and changing too.
Absolutely. It's a journey of mutual transformation. We learn from our kids just as much as they learn from us.
I think that's the best part of it all. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm feeling a sense of both humility and hope. Humility because we can't control everything, and hope because our kids have the strength, the resilience, the capacity for love to create their own amazing lives
Well said. It's about trusting in their journey.
and trusting in ourselves.
Exactly.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this exploration of the wild, wonderful, and often baffling world of parenting teenagers. Hopefully, it's given you some food for thought, some practical tips, and a renewed sense of hope for this incredible journey we're all on. Thanks for joining us.